Let's get back to the New South Wales election. Counting is continuing and it looks like that Labor will not get to majority. They're not far off though, but still they'll operate in minority government. They've already been given and guaranteed supply and confidence. But we are, a couple of days on from the results, so let's pick over them a bit. Former MP Andrew Constance joins me actually here at the desk, which is a nice change.
Yeah,
good to see you not on Zoom. There are a lot of lessons in this election, in every election, but a lot of soul searching for the Liberal Party. Do you think? What happened?
Well, look, I think, there's a couple of things. I mean, there was 11 incumbents retire. So Dom was always going to be on the back foot. A lot of them were ministers. They'd been tied to a fantastic government in terms of the infrastructure program, the service delivery. And I think the community just sensed after 12 years they wanted to head in a different direction. It wasn't the direction that I think everybody expected on Saturday night when it was called as majority. I mean, I myself was on one panel and I said, well, it'll be majority government, but it looks like it won't be now. So it's turned into a Labor Greens minority government pretty much overnight.
If you look just below the surface, I mean, I said as well, looks like majority and possibly in a landslide. Now, it didn't end up being that way, but, Labor made huge inroads in places like Miranda, Oatley, and that is landslide territory when you look at that.
Yeah.
I think, One Nation, Mark Latham was talking up taking lower house seats, getting potentially 4 in the upper house on his own parameters. I think it's a flop, but One Nation did make big inroads in the seat that it ran in, and the Teals almost got there as well. There is, among some Conservatives, a view that Perrottet, despite his Conservative credentials, was too Labor light. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I mean, as with any situation like this, there's a need for a review, and that can assess individual seats and circumstances, but also more broadly, I think the party doesn't exist for itself. It's set up to be a party of the community. And I know there's a bit of talk around about the message going into the Teal seats versus, what was sent to Western Sydney.
You've got to do that, don't you?
I think the thing is that the party more broadly has to be mindful that the community is first and foremost in everything it does.
Yeah.
From the way in which its local members are connecting with the local community, the issues before the local community and the empathy required to connect. And then more broadly, I mean, we saw 2 leaders who performed admirably, which probably did start to provide a platform to actually talk about policy for a change.
Yeah.
And
I did think scare campaigns were allowed to run away. I think despite, Perrottet being forced really to rule out privatisation, the Labor ads were all running with that.
Yeah, and I found out would be a little bit bewildering because Chris Minns has gone out and said, I'm going to sell public land to build social housing.
I did ask him about that.
That is a form of privatisation.
Yeah.
But
he denied that. Asset recycling, privatisation.
I did feel, though, the government had lost the confidence of the public sector. And there's over 400,000 employees in the New South Wales public service. It's 10% of the workforce. And if you add their families into the mix, they weren't in a happy place. So,
that's a good way to put it.
So I mean, particularly after COVID, the incredible work that our health workforce did. So, look, the 3% per annum wage cap is now gone, and that will present an interesting dynamic between Chris Minns and his public sector union bosses. But also, I think the state itself, in terms of fiscal discipline at this time, it's really important because we're a third of the economy, a third of the population in New South Wales. And yet it will have national implications if the government doesn't perform well in terms of its fiscal management. So, my sense out of this is that there's going to be some, it's a bumpy time for Australia. I mean, people are scared. They're concerned about financial stress. We do need to see solutions on the table to tackle those issues, which are innovative. And I think the Liberal Party, certainly in terms of its economic management credentials, stands above Labor. So, my hope is certainly from the national team through to our state oppositions, we do start to work constructively in the interest of the community and talk less about ourselves.
We often talk about women not being energised by the Liberal Party and not wanting to vote for them in increasing numbers. That might be true in the cities and in some of these teal seats where Teals did challenge moderates. But what about in places like the South Coast? Is that a women issue or is it the opposite, do you think?
Look, I think certainly in terms of communities, I mean, I ran for Gilmore last year, as you know. It's probably one of the most progressive electorates in Australia in a way, right bangs back in the middle of the centre. But my sense also is that you do need to connect. The gender inequality issues do need to be brought to the fore, and good public policy is what's going to inspire women to get involved in politics, and particularly the Liberal Party side of things. And that takes an enormous effort. I've always said good policy attracts good people to politics. It's not hard. It's not rocket science.
Well, on that, are you going to have a crack at the Senate?
Well, there's nominations opening soon, and
Yep.
I will have some more to say about that.
Sounds like a yes.
It does sound like a yes. But, there is no doubt from my perspective, the Liberal Party, in terms of country representation, I think one thing that has come out certainly in both of the federal and state elections, if you look at them holistically, there is a disconnect between country people and the decision-making happening in Canberra and in Sydney. Particularly for my area, having lived through the worst wildfires in the globe's history, and we've also seen communities affected up in Lismore. I mean, there is years of rebuilding, years of trauma that has to be overcome, and we need to attract builders to those areas to get the homes built, but also people are massively underinsured. So with all the money that's gone around, I think government needs to be dipping into its pocket to hand support to these people.
That sounds like a yes and a pitch, actually.
Well, thank you for that. But, the thing is that, I will wait and see once the nominations are open.
Okay. You think Dominic Perrottet might try his hand at federal politics, or Matt Keane?
Look, I think particularly in terms of Dom, 12 years is an incredible time in state parliament. He's been premier, he's been treasurer, he's been finance minister.
I think don't be greedy.
I think Helen would kill him. And Macquarie Street's
If I was her,
he's a long way away in Canberra. But look, Dom has an enormous contribution still given to the future, and I've worked with him closely over the years. Great guy, and his speech on Saturday night, I think, it was remarkable. So we'll wait and see in terms of Dom and who puts their hands up. But look, the Liberal Party itself, it's for the community, and that's where we're going to focus.
All right. Soon to be Senator Andrew Constance, perhaps. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Lauren.